Hi guys. Okay, so I'm back with the 50 Architects You Should Know Women Edition. I took the day off yesterday because we have so much work right now, but I'm happy to be back with none other than Marion Mahony Griffin. She was the real architect behind Frank Lloyd Wright. So let's get into it. She was born February 14th, 1871 in Chicago, Illinois. In 1894, Marion was the second woman to graduate from MIT with a Bachelor of Science in Architecture. A couple of years later, she was the first employee hired by Frank Lloyd Wright. And for those of you who don't know who Frank Lloyd Wright is, he is a famous architect and it's world renowned. And we'll get into his history a little bit because it's kind of tied into Marion a lot, but I one day might do a video just on Frank. Okay, so in 1898, 12 architects took the first ever licensing exam in Chicago, and she was one of the 12, and homegirl passed the first time. We talked about how hard that is. I don't know if it was that hard back then, but it's still a huge accomplishment. So yet again, here's Marion, a woman, fully licensed architect, working for a man that didn't even have a degree in the field, let alone a license. It's rumored that Frank never even graduated high school. He took 2 civil engineering classes and that was it. So he didn't have a degree in the industry, didn't have a license, nothing. Many sources say that the only reason Frank became so popular was because of Marion's amazing renders. They 100% sold his designs, so much so that the fact that Frank wasn't licensed didn't matter, or even that the structures were flawed. So it's common knowledge that Frank Lloyd Wright's buildings were more art as opposed to livable. So it didn't even matter that the structures were flawed and would not stand the test of time. Frank didn't design for structure stability and longevity. He designed for aesthetics. He wanted showstopper buildings, and he didn't really care that the roofs leaked and the walls cracked, which almost every single property he designed happened to. There was a lot of complaints about like roofs leaking and walls cracking, and anyway. Before you come for me, let me say that Frank is one of my absolute favorite designers. I do love his work. Love his work. His aesthetic is exactly my aesthetic. I love that like mid-century modern prairie look. His falling water design or falling water house is on my must visit before I die list. So I absolutely love the man and his work. Well, his work. The man was a hot mess. That's also very commonly known. So Google it and you'll see. So don't come for me. The man was a hot mess, both professionally and personally. And that's all common knowledge. But did he design beautiful structures? Absolutely. Were they livable? Questionable. Anyway, back to Marion. At some point, she did leave Lloyd's firm, but in 1909, when he decided to leave to Europe with his mistress, now that's a story for you. Really quick, I won't take up too much time, but he left his wife and she left her husband so that they could be together. Not Marion, the mistress. So, and then they went off to Europe together, and it was rumored that the mistress was a very mean woman, especially to her staff. So one of her staff members, who apparently was mentally ill, had just had about enough with her and set the house on fire. I think there was like 8 other people inside the house with her, including both of her sons. And he set the house on fire, and then as people were exiting the burning building, he was outside the door with an axe, killing them all as they were exiting. So I think out of the 9 people there, only 2 survived. You should look at that up because that's a scandalous story. But anyway, in 1909, when Frank decided to leave to Europe with his mistress, he left the firm to Herman von Holst. I think I said that right. His only stipulation was that Marion be brought back. So Herman's only stipulation was like, listen, I can't run this and I can't continue this firm or carry this firm on without Marion and her work. So she went back to work for Herman. In 1911, she married Walter Burley Griffin after she recommended him to Herman to help develop the landscape surrounding 3 houses they had been commissioned for. Marion worked on several commissions outside of Frank's office. In 1903, she designed the All Souls Church in Evanston, Illinois, and several lavish homes around Illinois too. Her and her husband eventually went on to own their own firm, and though it was mostly under his name, and they entered the international competition to design Canberra, I think I said that right, a new capital city in Australia. So he designed the building while Marion did the renders and designs, though she grew increasingly frustrated with him because he was a procrastinator and, you know, she needed time to render. And she wrote a memoir, and in it she says, in quote, "Maybe you can design an entire city in 2 days, but the renders take time and that falls on me. What's the point in thinking about a thing like this for 10 years if when the time comes you don't get it done in time?" So, you know, she put her foot down. She was like, get to work. If you want me to do these dang renders for this competition, you need to get to work. And they did, with the help of other architects and friends and her renders. They went on to win the competition to design this new city in Australia, partly because of the strength of her renders. I mean, we'll see her renders in a minute. They're gorgeous and they really do drive the design home. I'm a huge advocate for 3D design because there's nothing like seeing the building. I absolutely hate using CAD because it's all 2D and it's all black and white lines on paper, and how can you possibly visualize what something's going to look like on, you know, black and white lines on a piece of paper? So everything I do and everything I design in 3D because that is what drives a design home. That is what drives my vision home for my clients. And you'll see, again, I admire her wholeheartedly because hers are all hand-drawn in watercolor. I can't do that to save my life. I can't draw a stick figure to save my life. And I used to be in the fashion industry, but listen, I don't need to know how to draw. I just need to know how to convey my points, and I can do that with a computer program. So my hat's off to her for being able to do that by hand because that's great. Anyway, so they go on to win this competition, and in 1914 they moved to Melbourne, Australia, and worked on the Canberra project until 1920. And then they just decided to stay there. In Australia, though, Marion only designed one building under her name and had various amounts of participation in the firm. So after a while, I think she just decided to do more like artistic and social causes as opposed to constantly being in the office with her husband and the team. In 1937, while living in India, so eventually work took them to India, Walter passed away, sadly, and so Marion closed the India office and moved back to Australia, but only for a couple of years, and then shortly moved back to Chicago. And then in her last years of life, she wrote The Magic in America. It's a memoir of more than 1,400 pages and 650 illustrations. And in it, she encourages women to enter the profession, saying, quote, "Women should continue to enter the architectural profession and that they should be willing to do so as equals of men, putting up with the same sacrifices and physical challenges as men do without expecting special concessions." Word, girl, word. If there's any profession that I think women can really just step right in without having to distinguish whether you're a man or a woman, is design, architecture, engineering. There's nothing in those professions that are solely for a man or solely for a woman. So we could do the exact same work. So I love that quote from her. Sadly, Marion died broke on August 10th, 1961 at the age of 90. I mean, Homegirl made it to 90. That's amazing. Like, that's, I think, really old, right? Normally for, like, that era, they didn't live that long. But anyway, but she did die penniless. And because it was labeled a pauper's death, I hope I said that right, which just means, like, if they can't find a next of kin or a family member or anybody to, like, pay for the funeral services or you know, even claim the body, then, you know, the state takes it over and they pay for it. So her ashes were placed in an unmarked grave, sad, until 1997, when, with the permission of her family, she was moved to Chicago's Architects Cemetery, where she lays to rest now with a granite marker embossed with one of her floral drawings. So I thought that was cool. I mean, that she eventually made it to the Architects Cemetery. Sad, though, that she died penniless and was put in an unmarked grave. That breaks my heart. For such an amazing woman, that breaks my heart. But anyway, now she's where she belongs, and now we know, you know, this amazing woman that did so much, not only for the architecture industry, but also to propel Mr. Frank's career forward. Another little tidbit, in one of the books I read, it said that at one point Frank actually sat at her desk and started, you know, messing with the picture she was drawing or the painting she was painting, and actually ruined it. And one of his more vocal employees, one that kind of, you know, stood up to him a little bit more, said, you know, you just ruined her perfect work. She, like, literally is way above and beyond your capabilities. And he, like, laughingly agreed, like, yeah, I guess you're right. She is kind of way better than me. So anyway, let's get into her body of work. Okay, so this first one, I believe, is a Frank Lloyd Wright building, or home, I should say. And it was done in watercolor. And just, like, the intricacy of it is gorgeous. I mean, I don't know if you could tell in this picture, but the windows are all stained glass, and she actually has every little square painted or depicted. It's amazing. And just the colors are so soothing, and it's very inviting, makes you just want to walk right up that little walkway and enter the house, maybe pick a flower on your way in. It's gorgeous. Next, this is the one of the commissions that she actually did on her own, and this was for a church. It's called All Souls Church, and it was for her minister at the time. So this was one of her own personal designs, one of her few. And I couldn't find any, like, watercolor renderings. I was only able to find this black and white one, but still super beautiful and super detailed. Like, the detail, and I'll probably say that a million times throughout the rest of this presentation, is like her detail is impeccable. And I could not do that to save my life. I mean, I can do that on a computer. I can make sure that it looks this detailed in a computer program, but for it to look like this by hand, never. So this is one of the watercolors, and this is definitely one of the Frank Lloyd Wright buildings or designs, I believe. It's just so, there's something so majestic and so just serene about this one. I think the colors that she chose are wonderful. She was obviously a wonderful artist. Another Frank Lloyd Wright home. This is another beautiful sketch. I love that this one has, like, the aerial view and then also has the 3D image. And it's all done, and it looks like just pencil or pen. It's just gorgeous. No color to this one, but the detail to it is really, really nice. And last but not least, it's this beauty. Again, it shows the 2D rendering, but then also the 3D rendering, which I believe is done in pencil. That doesn't look like watercolor, but maybe it is. Maybe it was done in watercolor and then black lined over it. I don't know, but it's beautiful. It's just, that is some real talent right there. And that, guys, is Marion Griffin. Amazing, right? She just did such amazing work and did so much to add to this industry. I'm sure her renderings and her drawings were inspiration for so many. They're inspiration for us now too. And kind of cool to know that she was the driving force behind Mr. Right, making him as popular as he is. There's always a great woman behind a man, isn't there? Anyway, I hope you guys have a great Friday, and please go look at something pretty today, because life is way too short to not look at something pretty every day. And I will see you guys later. Bye, guys.